Hey, it's Scott from Intuitive Musician. In this video, we are going to talk about Frank Zappa's personality type. If you like to geek out on this sort of thing and you want more content like this, you can go to intuitivemusician.com/tips. Okay, Frank Zappa was an outrageously brilliant musician. He was prolific, provocative, bold, intelligent, controversial, and incredibly creative. So was he an ISTP or an ENTP? This video is a little advanced. I'm going to assume that you understand the cognitive functions. If you're not familiar and would like to learn more, you can go to intuitivemusician.com/learn. I think it will still be worth watching, though, even if you don't understand the jargon.
Hello, my name is Frank Zappa. I'm a rock and roll musician. I'm a composer. And I make movies.
So, there's a persistent debate on the internet about Frank Zappa as either ISTP or ENTP. I think there's a lot of overthinking and confusion going on here. With a little bit of experience, it's usually pretty easy to tell these two types apart if you know what to look for. And Frank Zappa is not a difficult case. I'll show you what to key in on. So let's start with what both sides agree on, that he was a TI user. TI is accuracy oriented. It doesn't care about outcomes or feelings. It cares about being objectively right.
Do you take it seriously yourself? Do you feel in some way you
depends on who's telling me. If I think that they know the difference between a genius and a loaf of bread, then I'll pay attention to them. But, you know, the average person who comes to me and says, "You're a genius," then, well, I'll just take it with a grain of salt, won't I?
Could you elaborate?
No. It's called rational thinking.
Part of the reason why Zappa's TI was so pronounced was because of his Enneagram type. He was an Enneagram 8. This is a pattern that emerges in childhood out of a fear of vulnerability. So 8s form a personality around being invulnerable. They want to project strength. They want to be one up on everyone else, and they can be intimidating. Here's a clip of Steve Vai talking about his audition for the band. Zappa was sizing him up. He wanted to know where he would break and how he would handle it.
But I went down, he told me to learn all these songs, and of course he pulled all these songs that I didn't know, you know. And he was so, you should ask Vinny, because Vinny was there, how brutal he was on me. I couldn't even believe it. He made it so difficult. There's one thing, and I know this isn't necessarily a Frank interview, but I'll tell you the story, it's great. This is during my audition. He says, and Frank would like play these things on the guitar, and he had a certain technique, but he wasn't like a shredder or anything like that, you know. And he'd play something, he'd say, "Play that," and I go, "Okay," and I play it, and he goes, "Okay, now play it in 7/8." I say, "Okay," and I play it in 7. He goes, "Okay, now play it reggae 7/8." I'm like, "Okay," and I do it, and he goes, "Okay, now add this note." "Okay," and I do it. Playing reggae 7/8, and I'm adding these notes. He goes, "Okay, add this note," and it was impossible. It just was physically impossible, not just for me, but for anybody. You know, I said, "Oh, I can't do that." And he goes, "I hear Linda Ronstadt is looking for a guitar player."
There's a strong kinesthetic element to the Enneagram 8 pattern. 8s can be bold and forceful, so this tends to bring out a sharp, cutting quality to their TI, which makes it more pronounced.
Tell you what, kiss my how do you like that?
So now let's get into the debate. One of the best ways to tell the difference between these two types is SE versus NE. SE enjoys physical sensation directly. I'm going to play a few songs that were written and performed by ISTPs. Notice how physical, kinesthetic, and straightforward these songs are.
The more I get, the better it is. I like it fine, I like a little whiz. She look like ladies, that's a fact. You know the taste is better than the taste, you know. Wanna tell this world that you're mine. Feel the love, feel everybody showing more. Come on. Oh, the fire!
Come on! Get into the groove, boy, you got to prove your love to me. Yeah, get up on the feet, yeah, step to the beat, boy, what will it be?
Gonna take you down the house tonight. Gonna show her my world. Not about to see your light. But if you wanna find hell with me, I can show you what it's like. Get up with it. Not about to see.
Now, not all ISTPs are going to play everything that straightforward and simple. ISTPs can certainly be progressive and push themselves to get to higher and higher levels of physical and musical ability, and many do. But I wanted to use some examples to show extroverted sensing in its clearest form for the sake of comparison. So now let's talk about NE. NE is different. It's more experimental than SE. Now listen to this part closely. This is key to spotting NE. Extroverted intuition is like a matrix of how the world works that operates in real time. NE types are compelled to improve the accuracy of this matrix so that they understand the world at higher and higher levels. The way that they do this is by experiencing novelty. When they've experienced something new, it gives them another piece of the puzzle. It takes them to a higher level of understanding the world. This is why NE types are compelled to experiment. They're constantly asking the question, what if? So NE primaries are going to juxtapose absurd ideas. They're going to use radical outside-the-box thinking. They're going to have an aversion to predictability. And they're just going to be generally weirder. Here are some songs from ENTPs. The difference should be obvious.
I think something is burning. Now you ruined the whole thing. Muffle the smoke along. Whoever put on this music, you better quick. Sharp, remove it, pour it.
My baby, let me go. And if you love me, let me go. 'Cause I'm your lover, you pay me twice, massaging on your knees. You lay in my thighs.
The piano has been drinking. My necktie is asleep. And the combo went back to New York. Jukebox been busted for several weeks. 'Cause the carpet needs a haircut. And the spotlight looks like a prison break. And the telephone's out of cigarettes. And the balcony is on.
Or a meal ago. Said coming to carry the real back there over the four matter middle swayed was mighty throat. Many a battle ran amidst the bayous were straight point went down the cross barrel. This saw some prowling machine. Truly a wonder of nature, the serpent predator. Tommy the cat had many a story to tell, but it was a rare occasion such as this.
Okay, so think back to the examples that I used. Think back to the differences between the songs from ISTPs and ENTPs, and think about what I said about extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition. And now take a look at Frank Zappa on the Steve Allen Show in 1963.
I got to tell the man in the control booth who was ready to run the tape, if he would just give me a quick blast of the tape so we can get started. All right. Now, the tape is pre-recorded electric noises that I stuck together. I gave my wife a clarinet and told her to play it, and she doesn't play a clarinet.
And then, I doesn't even have a wife. How do you like that?
then I did some electric things to it. And it's very interesting. You'll hear a woman singing in there someplace, and I recorded that off the radio. I stuck it in. But now the way we work this is, when the man in the control booth feels moved to add his electronic part to our work here, he will throw a little switch, which just lets some of this noise through. And then I request of the musicians that if they feel so moved, make any noise possible on your instrument. Try and refrain from musical tones. And in fact...
They won't have any trouble with that order.
If it would be possible for you
the regular way, fellas. I'm sorry.
If it would be possible for you to put some sort of objects on the strings of the piano, you'll get... That's good. I prefer you to play it that way.
All season long, Don.
All right. Now, we'll start.
Are we on?
Does that look like an ISTP to you? Because it sure doesn't to me. ISTPs are more practical. ENTPs are more experimental. With some notable exceptions, ISTPs are much more likely to repeat things if they work and they feel good. ENTPs prefer to constantly create things that are completely new. Zappa had outright contempt for repetitious, sensation-oriented music. Listen to what he says in this interview. He's talking about creating music that's literally impossible to imagine because of all the insanely talented musicians improvising together at a very high level. This is an ENTP musician's dream. I imagine it's maybe the greatest musical high they can possibly achieve on stage.
What I do on the guitar has very little to do with what other people do on the guitar. Most of the other guitar solos that you hear performed on stage have been practiced over and over and over again. They go out there and they play the same one every night, and it's really just spotless. My theory is this: I have a basic mechanical knowledge of the operation of the instrument, and I got an imagination. And when the time comes up in the song to play a solo, it's me against the laws of nature. I don't know what I'm going to play, I don't know what I'm going to do. I know roughly how long I have to do it, and it's a game where you have a piece of time and you get to decorate it. And depending on how intuitive the rhythm section is that's backing you up, you can do things that are literally impossible to imagine sitting here, but you can see them performed before your very eyes in a live performance situation. I don't like any of the guitar solos that have ever been released on a record, and I think that the real fun of playing the guitar is doing it live, not freezing it and saving it on a piece of plastic someplace or putting it on a video.
So every night then is spontaneous for you, huh?
Absolutely.
It keeps it fun?
Well, think of it the other way. You know, what if you had to play exactly the same notes every night? Isn't that like punching a clock?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who needs that crap?
We started as a rock and roll band, and we just continued with that. We haven't deviated from it. You know, we just stuck to being, you know, playing rock music. We haven't wanted to play anything else.
Isn't that like punching a clock?
That famous duck walk that you are doing there, where did that come from?
One time at the Paramount it was when I first did it. I did it in the act on an instrumental and played my guitar, and I got a big ovation, so I coined it as one of the things I should do in the act.
Isn't that like punching a clock?
I just get out of my own way, and when I feel a song, then, you know, I write it, and then I'll play it a half a dozen zillion times, and then I try to put some kind of meaning to it.
Isn't that like punching a clock?
Rock and roll should be rebellion for its own sake, with no clear goal in mind, fueled by all kinds of fun and like with naked women all over the place backstage. I don't care what your prejudices are. I don't have them.
There is a strong desire to be famous, to be rich, to have all the cocaine you want to stick up your nose, have a chainsaw to chop up your hotel room, and naked girls running around with, you know, leather things with points on their wrist and stuff. That's what everybody wants, you know? And they should have that. Let's just get it out of my face.
Okay, here's Zappa conducting the audience. This is novelty, absurdity, and experimentation, clear NE. Can you imagine someone like Miles Davis, John Mellencamp, Amy Winehouse, or Glenn Danzig doing something like this?
Sometimes during our show, we'll conduct the audience as a musical instrument. Like I have hand signals that I use to conduct the band that gives them cues to make musical sound effects and so forth. And sometimes these cues are extended to the audience if we have an audience that's in the mood for it. And looks like you guys might be in the mood for it, some of you anyway. What I'll do is demonstrate, first of all, what the cues are, and then I'll show you how they are to be applied to make a piece of music out of absolutely nothing. Okay? First of all, one finger means get ready to applaud. Now, ordinarily in TV, you've got a sign that lights up and says clap your hands. However, for this exercise, one finger means get ready to applaud. And I'll point to one part of the audience, and you start applauding over here. And as my finger goes across, you stop clapping, and the people over here start clapping, so you can move the applause around the room like stereo. It sounds very interesting, and you can also get the loudness and softness of the applause, and it'll work pretty nice. Let's try it. This means get ready. Start right over here on this side. The people in the front row will start clapping and stop as my hand goes across like that. Let's try it. Now, as the hand goes across, you stop so that the sound travels over there. You have mono TV, folks, so you can't really hear it moving around. But, okay, try it again. See, you're up at the top row now. At the top. That's the most simplistic one. Now the next is two fingers, and this requires that you make a very low noise. You can go any low noise that you want to make with your mouth on cue for two fingers like this. Are you ready? Everybody at once. All right. Now, you guys wait for just a second. Now, if the band will watch, two fingers down like this means to play any low note on your instrument, just as sort of a bump cutoff, you know, like an exclamation point. So the drummer would probably hit the kick drum, the floor tom, and the guitar player can play a low E, and you can hit your low E, and everybody else play a pedal tone, and just a little toot like that. Try it one time. But really short and solid. Okay, now here is just the opposite of that. The highest possible note on your instrument. Let's go. Okay. Now, we have four possible signals. Grunt, peep, clap, and poot. Okay? That's your odds. Okay? Now let's try and make something out of grunt, peep, clap, and poot. Okay? We'll start with a peep. Okay, now, all right. Now we're going to enrich our musical texture now by including a chord, which you may choose any note of any one you like, folks. Attack any pitch and increase the volume. This is increase in volume, and this is bend the pitch down, and this is bend the pitch up. So, any note. Let the pitch fall off and just move it like that so that it's like a wave. There we go. Okay. One more time now.
That's wild.
So, yes, Frank Zappa was an ENTP, and I think that might be clear by now, but let's get into one more point about Zappa and NE. In his book, Neuroscience of Personality, Dario Nardi talks about an aspect of NE called transcontextual thinking. Here's a quote from the book. Regardless of what kind of stimulus enters the brain, be it a sight, sound, smell, sensation, or so forth, the brain responds by rapidly processing that stimulus in multiple regions, including regions seemingly not applicable to the stimulus. So they're using various regions of their brains to find unusual connections between things across different contexts. A great example of how this plays out is the Tom Waits song you heard earlier in the video. This is transcontextual thinking. The piano has been drinking, my necktie is asleep, and the combo went back to New York. The jukebox has to take a leak, and the carpet needs a haircut, and the spotlight looks like a prison break, and the telephone's out of cigarettes, and the balcony is on the make. This is something that NE primaries do that, as far as I can recall, I've never seen an ISTP do. Zappa did this all the time. Here are a couple quotes. Tobacco is my favorite vegetable. And the computer can't tell you the emotional story. It can give you the exact mathematical design, but what's missing is the eyebrows. Now, he said stuff like this all the time. In fact, let me throw out a few of his song titles. The Voice of Cheese, Prelude to the Afternoon of a Sexually Aroused Gas Mask, Bebop Tango Contest, Beer Shampoo, and My Guitar Wants to Kill Your Mama. Here's a video of Zappa talking about the score for his movie 200 Motels. See how many examples of transcontextual thinking you can spot.
The sopranos and altos blowing bubbles with a straw into a paper cup in this area A here, and the narrator, who might possibly be the conductor. You know, it would be funny to have the conductor saying these lines. He says, the girl wants to fix him some broth. And then at that point, the sopranos and altos take the stuff that they've been blowing the bubbles in and they pour it into a cheap aluminum pan, which makes a dribbling noise. And that's accompanied by the vibes and the bells playing this little madness here. And then she's trying, in her dream, she's trying to win his love, and she's actually making a low-budget attempt to seduce this boy in this vacuum cleaner. And then she says, would you like some broth? And the narrator says, some nice soup? And she goes, some hot broth? And the chorus goes, yum, and snaps their fingers, and then they hum. And he says, small dogs in it? And the chorus goes, doggies? And she goes, do ya? And the chorus goes, do. And he says, you like broth? And the chorus goes, do, wadnum. And then they sing hot dog broth. And he says, dog broth? You like dog broth hot? How do you like it? And the soprano soloist says, hot broth, hot dog debris. The sopranos and altos sing debris and then stomp their foot. Little marimba madness in there. And then the whole chorus goes, dog breath, dog broth, dog breath, broth. And simultaneously the narrator is saying debris. Of the four styles offered, debris, broth, breath, and the ever-popular, hygienic European version, tinsel cock. And then there's a fanfare where the whole chorus screams.
Now, I could play videos all day of Zappa very clearly using NE, but I think you get the idea by now. Understanding NE is fundamental to understanding how and why Zappa was a genius. His whole career was built on constant experimentation. He was probably about as clear of an example of an ENTP and as far from being a censor as anyone I can come up with. If you'd like to dig in more and do some more research on Frank Zappa, I've posted some links in the description of this video for you to check out. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any requests for me to profile any other musicians, then let me know in the comment section. I'm specifically looking to profile musicians who people are interested in and where there's some controversy about their type. If you'd like me to analyze your personality, you can go to intuitivemusician.com/mytype. If you'd like some more tips on how to tell what type other people are, then you can go to intuitivemusician.com/tips. And if you're an intuitive musician yourself, then I invite you to join us in the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/intuitive-musicians.
Schools train people to be ignorant with style. They give you the equipment that you need to be a functional ignoramus. American schools do not equip you to deal with things like logic. They don't give you the criteria by which to judge between good and bad in any medium or format. And they prepare you to be a usable victim for a military-industrial complex that needs manpower. As long as you're just smart enough to do a job and just dumb enough to swallow what they feed you, you're going to be all right. But if you go beyond that, you're going to have these grave doubts that give you stomach problems, headaches, make you want to go out and do something else. So I believe that schools mechanically and very specifically try and breed out any hint of creative thought in the kids that are coming up.